In this episode, I'm going to tell you how to make your weakest muscles your strongest ones.
The sun is shining, the birds are chirping, the bacon is sizzling. Welcome to the Daily Swole.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 190 of the Daily Mother Swole. I kind of feel bad every time I look down at Facebook and Periscope, and you can't see the flex, so you have to go on YouTube to see the flex. Let me do it again for the YouTubers. Ah, yes. Come in, come in. Thank you for joining me live on Facebook and Periscope, and also, of course, YouTube at Swolenormous. You can also catch the podcast every single day on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher. So you can find this for your ears, you can find it for your face, and you can find it live. So I always stay for a few minutes after. Some of the questions I'm answering, if you're watching me after on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast, I answer questions, sometimes live streaming, depending if they're on topic, and you're not being rude and nasty. I will answer some of those questions during the flow of the show on Periscope and Busker. I'm seriously thinking about squatting every day for a week. There's those squat every day programs. I don't know so much. I don't really know about that. I think that's a little bit absurd. I think that's asking for a problem for the majority of people that will ever try that. So only way to know is to do it. I'm not going to knock it. Don't knock things until you try it. Try anything 5 times. Right? Isn't that what they say? This episode is beard goals. Absolutely. This episode is titled, Make Your Weakest Muscle Your Strongest. This is from a famous quote from Arnold from Pumping Iron, talking about making his weakest points his strongest points. This is an interesting concept because most of you that talk to me, ask me questions about fitness, ask me questions about seeing progress, you always have a specific area or a body part. Like, you're not happy with, you want your abs to look better. You want bigger biceps. You want to get your legs bigger. You'll have a certain focal point that you're concerned with. You'll have an area of the body that you want to improve specifically. Because of that, there's going to be a different type of shift that you're going to have to take when it comes to your training. You're going to have to look at your workouts a little bit differently. You have to prioritize. If you're not prioritizing your training, a lot of times if you want your abs to look better, you have to, of course, prioritize what you do in the kitchen and your overall nutrition. If you're trying to get bigger biceps, for example, if you're trying to get bigger legs, for example, your workout and your training program has to correlate with that goal. You have to be training more frequently. You have to be doing more volume. You have to be doing these muscles first in the workout when you're more rested, when you have more energy, when you can have a greater output to isolate those muscles that you want to improve. Just saying you want to work on them more and just doing the same type of workout with the same type of schedule obviously won't cut it. Why? With just plain common sense, it's not going to cut it because you don't have it already. If what you were doing was working, you would have what you wanted. You wouldn't be asking me questions. And that's the simplest answer. That's the simplest answer, and I know it's common sense. It makes, it's pretty obvious, but if you don't have it now, what you're doing now isn't working, so you have to change it. You have to mix it up. You could do your workout. You could isolate these muscles. You could start prioritizing. You could do it multiple times per week. That's one way. You could start doing legs twice a week. You can split up the body parts, maybe do more squats and lunges one day and more hamstrings and kind of like, hip extension based exercise the next. You can do biceps maybe twice a week, 3 times a week. Smaller muscle groups tend to recover quicker. The multiple times a week can be a challenge because muscles still need rest. Now, frequency versus volume, how often you're going to train a muscle, and the volume and the quantity of each workout. If you're going to do 2 hours of biceps on Monday, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing 2 hours of biceps on Thursday. If you're going to do things 3 times a week, doing 2 hours on Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a bicep muscle is a little bit excessive. It's actually a lot excessive. But since you're doing frequency, you don't have to do maybe as much per workout, maybe half an hour 3 times a week. This is something that you're going to have to find and figure out for yourself. You're going to have to do a frequency versus volume test. Give it a few weeks where you're doing less overall volume but more frequent, and then try a couple times when you're doing less frequent but more volume. more reps, more sets in a given workout. So example, maybe 3 times a week for half an hour as opposed to twice a week for an hour and 15 minutes. Just throwing out some random numbers. I'm not saying write those down and take it to heart, literally those exact figures, but that's the concept. It's complicated to develop the deltoids too. Once I even got hurt, I can only work out there are certain muscles that are going to be harder to develop in most people. Generally, people have trouble with calves, forearms, any muscle and deltoids that gets a lot of frequent exposure that is designed to be working more frequently because they have a greater number of slow twitch muscle fibers for endurance. Those areas of the muscle or the body are designed to be exposed to consistent stress. The shoulder's always working, the calves are always working for walking, and and the forearm's always working for, finite movements with the hand and the wrist. Those muscles that have a greater percentage of type 1 fibers are less likely to develop and grow because type 1 fibers aren't designed to grow. They're designed to be able to produce a low level of force over an extended period of time, more endurance muscles. No matter what you choose, whether you choose frequency, volume, multiple times per week, whatever you try to do them earlier in the workout, do it first, use most of your energy on them, and be consistent. You have to figure out quantitatively if something works. If you are just going to the gym and just doing some stuff, but you're not measuring it, you're not giving it enough time to develop and to grow. It's like planting a seed, watering it, and expecting it to be a plant or a tree the next day. It takes time. So you don't know if what you're doing is going to work unless you do it consistently on a regular basis for 3, 4, 5 weeks. You have to give it that patience and give it 100% effort. If you don't, then it's not an accurate test. So whatever you decide to try to get these stubborn body parts to grow and whatnot needs to come from a place of consistency and discipline. That dedication and that regular output is what is going to determine your results. You don't know if frequency is going to work unless you do it for a few weeks. You don't know if the volume is going to work better unless you do it for a few weeks. And by a few weeks, I mean at least 3 or 4 weeks where you can really see some progress. You might feel right away like, oh, this is going to be great. But then maybe it's too much for you and you start getting tendonitis, you start getting hurt, or you just feel like you're not recovering. So maybe it doesn't work. Just because you feel sore doesn't mean something that you're doing is working long term. It just means it's a shock stress that your body is got a lot of like micro trauma from. So soreness isn't necessarily the measurement you need to look for in terms of results or whether something was successful or effective. It is the actual development. It's the actual progress. It's actually starting to see or being able to measure what it is that you want to improve. I'll say for a few minutes after on Periscope and Facebook Live. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 190 on this Saturday of the Daily Mother Swole, making your weakest muscles your strongest. So if you're trying to improve your calves, improve your forearms, improve your biceps, improve your deltoids, they need to be prioritized. So start thinking about how often you train them, start thinking about how much in a single workout that you train them, and also start looking at the intensity, your diet, everything. Depends on what you want, but start prioritizing those muscles. Prioritize them. Don't leave them for the same type of frequency and volume that you've already been doing because obviously that ain't working. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I'll see you tomorrow for episode 191 of the Daily Swole. Peace.